Good morning, everybody. I'm Pastor Chris. I'm filling in for Pastor Jason for the next 2 weeks. And we're going to be preaching on a series called Raising Lazarus. And if you know the story of Lazarus, raising him from the dead, this is great. If you don't, great as well. We're going to go super deep into this passage. I believe that this is one of the most important things to understanding resurrection and Jesus, and we're gonna go super deep into this. So first, we have to answer the question: what do we know about Lazarus? So let's jump in. All right, what do we know about Lazarus? Number one, not a whole heck of a lot, just what it is. All right, so he is not a disciple. Okay, but we do know that he's like a follower. Like he was with a group of people that often followed Jesus. And it was around Jesus during a lot of his teachings. But he wasn't a disciple. Number two, we know that Jesus loved Lazarus. And Lazarus loved Jesus. They had a relationship. They were friends. They were close. There was love and faith between both of them. The next, we know that he had two sisters that were very famous. And they're Martha and Mary. You may have heard of Martha and Mary before. They're very famous. He has two sisters. We need to know that. And also in our passage that we are going to explore over the next 2 weeks, we know that Lazarus gets sick, he dies, and then is raised from the dead. So big things are about to happen, okay? So let's take a look at a piece of the passage as we go through it. So here is our passage for today. Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, "Lord, the one you love is sick." When he heard this, Jesus said, "This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it." Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. He stayed where he was 2 more days. Now, I believe that everyone has anxieties. They just look different for different people, okay? It just kind of like manifests differently. Some people have anxieties about being neat and orderly. And then some people just don't, okay? Some people have anxieties about numbers, right? And some people are like, I hate numbers. I never think about numbers. Some people have anxieties like, I left the water running, or I left the knob on the stove on. And they think about it all day long and even get someone to check on it. And some people, they don't have that anxiety at all. Some people have anxieties about their favorite sports teams. And some people are like, I hate sports. For me, my anxiety is all about time. And isn't it amazing how God usually pairs you up in marriage with someone who's separate of your anxiety, right? That's usually how it works, right? But I cannot stand to be late. To be honest, I would be perfectly content to show up 2 hours early for something and just sit in my car, all right? Just knowing that I will not be late today. When I was a teacher, I showed up before the janitors did. They were like, here, you take the key, open it up for us. You're there super early. And when it comes to like anxieties, I believe it comes through something that maybe happened, something through childhood. And so let me show you a little bit of how my anxiety of time was acquired by me, all right? I was in high school, and I was blessed with the aspect that I made this competitive baseball team. But they knew how to get to me. They were like, listen, your playing time is only going to be based on you showing up to practice and being on time for practice. there it goes. It's right there, right? So I had to work that day, and I'm able to drive at this time. And so I'm driving to the practice. I printed out my directions. Remember when you had to do that? Some people are like, I don't even remember I remember when we didn't have a printer. But I printed out my directions, and I had to have something to eat before my practice, a very limited time. So I'm eating, driving, and have the directions, and I also had no AC in my car, and so the windows are down, and I'm driving through an intersection, and as I drive through the intersection, my directions right out the window. And so I had to base finding this place. I'm not gonna go back and search in the intersection, on Highway 35 for my directions. So I had to figure it out through what I read through the directions, which was not much at that time. Also, I had been to this field 2 years prior, but I wasn't a driver at that time. You're not paying attention quite as much. And I also stopped at a bunch of gas stations, and people were like, I don't know where that field is. I based it on all of those things, and I eventually found the field. However, I was very, very late. And I will say that my peace that day was stolen from me. I did not have peace. Don't you hate that feeling of that loss of peace because of something like that? Do you know who doesn't have that feeling? Jesus. Jesus did not have that feeling. Jesus is asked to go see Lazarus, who is sick. Mary and Martha, when they first sniff of Lazarus being sick, they send word right to Jesus and have someone go to Jesus and say, tell him that he's sick and that he needs to come and heal him. And Jesus says these words, this sickness will not end in death. It will be used for God's glory. I don't know about you, but if I got this response from God, I'd be like, Jesus, maybe you just didn't hear it clear. Maybe the messenger just didn't get it right. He's really, really sick, like really, really, really sick, and you need to come. And Jesus is like, the sickness will not end in death. And Jesus still did not come. And if you know the story like we do, and maybe you don't, but Lazarus dies. Why wasn't Jesus more urgent? Why didn't he go? Right? We sit with this. Why didn't he show up? You and I live in this time of waiting for Jesus to show up. You know it well. The stress of life, of health, of not knowing what to expect in this life, right? The waiting for someone in our family or our friends to change. We want them to change and they're not doing it fast enough. Or waiting for test results, right? That waiting can feel like death. It's heavy. Jesus, we need you to show up right now. Maybe you're just not hearing me clear enough. We need you. Maybe some of us are still waiting for Jesus to show up in expectations that we have, and they're just not happening, right? And we're starting to get a little bit impatient. Faith is feeling all of those hurts, all of those pains and anxieties, but gripping onto the fact that Jesus said, this sickness will not end in death. Like there's something miraculous that's gonna happen. So let's move on to see what happens more. All right? Here goes. I'm gonna go to verse 11. After he had said this, he went on to tell them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him up. His disciples replied, Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better. Jesus had been speaking of his death, But his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So then he told them plainly, "You're not getting it. Lazarus is dead. And for your sake, I'm glad I was not there so that you may believe. But let us go to him." He had to say, Lazarus is dead. He had to get it to them, clear the message, right? So there is a new term for parenting that's being thrown around lately. There's been a lot through the years, and I want you to kind of get used to some of these. You might have heard these before. It used to be tiger moms, all right? This was a parenting term, right? Tiger moms are tough on the kids. They want them to excel. They want to really do well, right? And so they're really tough. They want them to do well in school, in activities, and sports, and all that stuff. And if anybody wrongs the kids, they roar, right? That's a tiger mom, okay? Then there's another one, and we may know this one too. We've heard of helicopter parents, right? Helicopter parents are making sure that the kids don't get hurt, they don't mess up. They're just very present over the kids, almost like they're helicoptering over them in all that they do, just making sure that everything's going neat and orderly, right? Now, here's the newest one, and I believe it's the worst of all of them. This is called lawnmower parents, okay? I don't know if you've heard of lawnmower parents before. This is a term that's actually thrown around even in the psychology world, okay? Lawnmower parents do not want their kids to hit any hardship or anxieties, anything tough in life, right? So what they do is they knock down the obstacles before their kids even get there, okay? They don't want them to suffer. Maybe they suffered in their life. Maybe they had some hardships that really caused some trauma in their life. So they make sure that every obstacle is knocked down before the kids get there, all right? And all of us parents can relate with that. I mean, I get it. Like, who wants to see your kids suffer, right? You don't want to do that. We had this event at our school with the kids, and the one event was kindergartners, first graders, and second graders, and it was a bake-off, okay? Now, I was excited about this because I actually wanted to see the messiness of kindergartners, first graders, and second graders cooking. Because could you imagine just giving your kids, here you go, just figure it out, here's the directions. You're gonna get some messy stuff. I was excited about this. When we got there, I got the complete opposite, okay? This would look like a gourmet, like bakers came in and like they tasted awesome. They were like the most amazing decorations. What I can guarantee is that most of these kids did not fully slave in these kitchens at all. There was a lot of parental involvement in this. There was a lot of parents probably making sure that their kids didn't suffer or lose or hit any hardships in that. But really what I wanted was the messiness. I wanted to see that. It's easy to see why we would do this, right? We don't want the kids to suffer. We don't want them to go through hardship. But Scripture is clear that hardship is actually a good thing, that it actually builds character. If a child never goes through hard things, then they don't know how to deal with life when it gets hard. And then they hit a hard thing and they feel like it's unfair because, no, things should be easier than this. In our passage, Jesus waits. And while he waited, Lazarus died. Jesus could have stopped him from dying, but he didn't. Whoa. What did you just say, Pastor? Jesus could have stopped him from dying, but he didn't. This is loaded with questions, right? I may even get some emails later about this. Why didn't he? What is going on? First, I need to pick through it, all right? let's look here. First, Jesus didn't just pick Lazarus to die, okay? So let's clear that one up. He's not like, Lazarus. Lazarus got sick, like people get sick, right? But why does sickness happen? Why does sickness happen? And the answer is we don't really know, but the biggest answer that the Bible gives about sickness and death is this. In the garden where there was no sin, there was no sickness and death. Outside of the garden where there is sin, right, there's sickness and death. So it's obvious that sin plays a place in sickness and death. Not the kind of sin where you do something, you do something bad, you get sick. No, that's called karma. That's not how that works. No, it's just the presence of evil is in the world. Sickness can happen, right? Now, that's why we need a sinless Jesus to enter the picture. Someone who's sinless to fix that problem of sickness and death. We need a God in a bod. All right? You ever hear that before? A God in a body is Jesus, right? A God in a bod. It's a great way to remember this. We need a God in a bod to fix the sin problem, right? But why does Jesus let bad things happen, all right? I'm gonna bring you into a theological world. I'm gonna ask you to concentrate here. I'm gonna bring you into like what's almost like a seminary class right now. Just a moment, just focus here, right? Why does Jesus let bad things happen, all right? The answer to this, because I know you've asked it before, why does God let bad things happen? The answer is we have free will, like we can do whatever we want in this world, right? You know it, right? We choose, we could do whatever we want. We have free will, right? But we're also not puppets, right? God lets us be free, and he doesn't control us like puppets or robots where we're controlled and all of our decisions are made for us, right? Because if Jesus embedded in us a control, the puppets, the robot, to do always the right thing, to always love him, right? That is just designed like puppets, we're just controlled like that. Guess what? If we're told that we have to love Jesus and we're controlled like that, that's not love, is it? That's not love. Love has to be a choice that you make. Because if you're just controlled to love something, that's not love. That's not real love. You actually have to choose love. You have to choose love. See, love is not love if it's not a choice. So we have to be free to choose. And because we live free, bad things can happen. And we can choose outside of God. And we often do, right? We often choose outside of God. We often choose ourselves. But here's what we really, really want. You want it, I want it, right? We want to be able to live free, choose whatever we want, but we also want God to be a lawnmower parent. We want God to knock down every obstacle, every hardship before we even get there. Wouldn't that be awesome? We want the freedom, but we also want the lawn mowing. We want them both. And the reality is that's not how it works. And it can't work. Because you can't have both. You can't be free but have no obstacles. You can't have love without the freedom. In order to have the love, you have to have the freedom. And so sometimes there's obstacles. Sometimes it's hard. Freedom comes with a cost. So the bigger question is this. This is the question that we have to ask, right? Where is Jesus when we do go through hardships and obstacles? Where is he? Because we're gonna go through them. There's no lawn mowing gonna happen. Where is he when the hardships and the obstacles happen? And here is it. We're going to go through verse 17 through 27. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now, Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. And the one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. Years ago, when my grandfather passed away, they had his viewing, right? And so that was one day. The funeral was supposed to be the next day. Sad occasion. It was awful feeling. You know it. At the viewing, someone came and gave us tickets to a Yankees game, which was like, this is perfect. Because like we have all night to wait for the funeral. Like I'd love to be distracted right now. That's great. So we went to the Yankees game, okay? So I go to the Yankees game, I'm a big Yankees fan. Like this is great, right? And then all of a sudden, like within the first 3 innings, the Yankees are losing 9-0. Like, oh, come on. Like literally like great, it's nice, we're family together, we're at the Yankee game, but really got to add this to it, like the most getting destroyed by the most amount of runs I've ever seen. Like 9-0 for maybe if you don't understand baseball all that well, 9-0 is when they start bringing like the outfielders to come in and pitch because they don't want to use their pitchers because they've already given up on the game. And so like it's 9-0, we're like, oh, great, this is awful. And so as the game is going on, there's like 2 innings left, 9-0, and the Yankees start chipping away. They're like, okay, great, yeah, they're finally starting to hit and score some runs, like whatever. And so they're chipping away and chipping away and chipping away, and still in your mind you're like, this just never happens. So like they're still gonna lose, but oh, cool, they're hitting, they're getting some runs, like cool, whatever. They actually kept coming and kept scoring runs to the point where it was the last inning, and they're only 1 run difference. It was 9-8, but there was a couple men on base, and it's the last batter. There's 2 outs. There's 2 strikes. This is probably the last pitch, and you're like, oh, great. Bring me all the way to this, and we're gonna lose now. Like, what's worse, right? I would have just rather, I accepted 9-0 back there, and now I'm gonna bring it all the way here, and then I'm gonna like to lose like this. All of a sudden, Jorge Posada, 3-run home run, game over, walk off. Most exciting game I've ever seen in my life. But you know what I did? I doubted the entire game that this was never going to happen. There's no way. And just I lived in this place of, right? When Jesus comes back to Bethany, he keeps saying, this will not end in death. And everyone keeps doubting, right? His sisters are like, yeah, I get it. We believe in resurrection in the end. We all get to live. Like, this is the equivalent if someone's saying, oh, you'll see him in heaven again. And you're like, yeah, I know. We'll see you in heaven. But I'm hurting right now. Right? Everyone kept hearing say Lazarus is going to live again, and they all kept saying, yeah, resurrection happens in the end. I get it. Everyone had very little faith that he was going to raise him when he got there. See, we too have very low expectations when it comes to Jesus. It's like we sit on this fence of faith, but we kind of lean in this area of it's not going to happen. It just won't. And why do we do that? Probably because we're protecting ourselves from hurts we've felt before. Often we do that. It's not going to happen. Because if it doesn't, then we feel like we won't be hurt that bad, right? We all do it. Very often, our faith is just too small. And we know it, right? But Jesus over and over and over again says he will live. Lazarus is going to live. It's mind-boggling because all of the people around Jesus who followed him actually had seen him raise someone from the dead before. They did. And they saw him heal people, but yet they were still doubting. Well, not this one, right? So let's move on to verse 32. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him." You know, when I was in seminary, they told us that we would actually grow to appreciate funerals more than weddings. And I was like, you're crazy. You're crazy. Weddings are fun. Weddings have food, right? Like, there's such happy times. Everybody's happy, right? There's such hope for the future. Like, funerals are so sad. Like, no one likes going to funerals. Like, no one says, "I can't wait to go to my next funeral," right? Like, what? Like, why would they tell us that, right? Why would they tell us that? But here's what happens. There is something really moving at a funeral. Why? There's actually so much healing that happens at funerals. The presence of the Holy Spirit is there, and it's moving around. The presence of the Holy Spirit's there at the weddings too, right? But it's moving, and it's healing among hurting people as they talk, share memories, all these things. The truth is that healing happens when we cry alongside of each other. That's healing. As pastors, we get to point to the fact that Jesus is very present, crying alongside us here in this moment. I remember when my grandfather passed away in that moment, that my wife, Nikki, and I, we had been engaged for like 3 months at that time. She maybe met my grandfather twice, right? And it was the first sad thing that we actually went through together. But her crying alongside me helped me heal. There's something powerful about people crying alongside of each other. Jesus gets to Mary, and she's so mad. She is so mad. He didn't show up. He had plenty of time to show up, and he didn't show up. And she's really sad. She just lost her brother, and he sees her weeping. And then the shortest verse in the whole Bible hits. Jesus wept. And I think that it is one of the most powerful, soul-hitting passages, just in 2 words. Jesus wept. See, as a kid, I never got this passage. Why would he cry? He was raising him from the dead, and a few moments later, he knew he was going to do it. Like, why would he cry? Like, why does he cry? Jesus, God in a bod, cries alongside us. He feels our pain. He sits with us alongside us, and he cries. He doesn't lawnmower the pain. He could have. We would like him to, right? We would like him to lawnmower that pain before Mary and Martha got there, just, right? He doesn't lawnmower it. He doesn't say, Mary, Martha, your pain, it's silly. He's going to rise again. He doesn't say it's silly. He just sits there with them like he does with us, and he cries. That's powerful. In this moment, we see Jesus fulfilling his mission. Why does God step into the flesh of Jesus, into a human? Why does he become God in a bod, right? Come out of heaven and experience what it's like to live in the flesh, live with us, because he wanted to feel our pain, and he couldn't do that in heaven away from us. That's love. He wanted to feel that pain, right? Jesus wants to feel your pain. In that moment with Mary, Jesus, we see him experience her pain with her. And he cries alongside his friends. He loved Lazarus, and we see that. Is resurrection gonna happen? Yes, it is. Is death the end? No, it's not the end, right? But is your pain real? Yeah, it's real. In Jesus, we see a God that doesn't belittle your pain, your anxieties, any of the hard things you're going through. He just sits with us in it. You see, when I sit with people in pain, you know what's one of the biggest things I always hear people say? Well, there's just so many people that have it worse than me. There's so many people. I really shouldn't be this upset. And the reality is, your pain is your pain. Your anxiety, your loss is your loss. Your hell is your hell. Don't belittle it. Jesus is there sitting with us in those moments because he knows what it's like. Next week, we move to the tomb, to resurrection. But we don't move there fast because right now we're in the waiting. Because we know what waiting's like. It hurts. And so we sit in this waiting. But you know what? The one thing we know is not happening in this waiting time is that we're sitting alone. It's not happening. God is present with us in this moment.